Welcome everybody, I'm Andrea Miller and I'm a registered dietitian and diabetes care and education specialist here at Community Hospitals and Wellness Centers in Bryan, and I'd like to welcome our live audience and our viewers at home to Live It, Stir Fry Your Way. So today we're going to be doing a couple different stir fries. Stir fries is one of my all-time favorite quick and easy meals to make at my house because generally, I can clean out my refrigerator when I make it. Stir fry your way, you don't have to make exactly what I make today. You can pick your protein, you can pick your vegetables, so that's where the clean out the refrigerator comes in because anything kind of goes in a stir fry. And I'm going to demonstrate two different sauces today, but I'm also going to provide to you up to 4 or more different sauces that you can make while you're preparing these recipes or ahead of time and freeze to make delicious stir fries quick and easy anytime. So let's get started on our first stir fry. I wanted to feature a different protein, something that you've probably never had. A lot of times when I'm working with patients and I say the word tofu, they kind of go, ugh, I don't know about that. How do you make it? So I'm going to show you guys how to make it today. Now keep in mind, if you're kind of leery about trying tofu, you absolutely don't have to use tofu. We're also going to do one with chicken today, but you could use beef, shrimp, anything goes. So lots of different options. But I'm going to get started with the tofu right away. I'm going to open it up. So it's important for a stir fry, you want an extra firm tofu. If you get a soft tofu, it's going to get kind of mushy in this stir fry. And it's packed in water. So I'm going to go ahead and drain the water off of it. And I usually wrap it in a paper towel and kind of squish out as much liquid as I can. And I have a little tub down here. I'm going to drain it in because I don't have a sink like I would at home. All right. So tofu is made out of soybeans. It's essentially made out of soy milk, and it's almost like soy cheese, I guess, but it's very bland. They basically curdle the soy milk like they would dairy milk for cheese, and then they press it to make a big block. And a lot of people, when they go for the knife, when they first see tofu, they actually think it looks a lot like mozzarella cheese. Okay, so I'm just going to get the block out here. So as you can see, it's very similar to mozzarella cheese. The other thing that I really like about tofu is it's inexpensive. Another complaint that I often get about eating healthy foods is that it's expensive. Well, these are very inexpensive recipes. I guess you can make them more expensive by choosing more expensive ingredients. But tofu is something that's not expensive and it is healthy for you. A block of tofu should cost less than $3. Whereas a good quality meat, sometimes you can get chicken for less than that, but a good quality meat often costs more than that. So it's an inexpensive ingredient. And again, I'm just kind of doing a little prep here. So as you can see, I'm just wrapping it in paper towels and trying to get as much moisture out of here as possible because that's going to help it to get a little bit more crisp. There's lots of liquid in there. So I'm just pressing out as much as possible. And then I'm actually going to set it aside while I'm prepping our other ingredients. So the first steps to a stir fry, actually there's a lot of different ways that you can do it, but how we're going to do it today is we're going to do our vegetables first, and then we're going to transfer them to a bowl, and then we're going to cook our protein, make our sauce, and then add it all in together. So let's get started with our vegetables. I always use an onion in a stir fry. For some reason, it's just not a stir fry unless I have an onion in it. You don't have to use an onion if you don't like it, but an onion is another extremely nutritious vegetable that's also very inexpensive, and I always have onions on hand. So I'm just peeling off the papery part. Actually going to cut it in a couple different ways. So for our tofu stir fry, we're using onion, carrot, red bell pepper, and broccoli. And I'm just going to use half of the onion, and I'm going to save the other half for our other stir fry. And so for this stir fry, I'm just going to kind of chunk the onion up a little bit because you want all the pieces to be roughly the same size. So I have my onion ready, and I'm going to chop up my red bell pepper. So something that's really cool about this recipe, we're, like I said, using tofu, which is a plant-based protein made out of soybeans. Soy is actually considered to be a complete protein, though, meaning it has all of the same amino acids or protein building blocks that meat would have. So it's a really good replacement for meat. So if you're trying to follow a plant-based diet, which has become more popular recently, tofu is something that you can add to your diet just to add a little bit more variety as a protein source. It also is a good source of iron, but plant-based iron we know doesn't get absorbed as easily as animal-based iron. But we're using red bell peppers and broccoli, which are really good sources of vitamin C. And vitamin C is going to help you to absorb that plant-based iron. So I have a couple carrots here. They're already peeled for me, so I'm just giving them a quick chop. Again, the goal is you want everything about the same size. And so the general ratio of ingredients here is a pound of meat, about 6 cups of vegetables, and then the per sauce recipe. Of course, if you have a big family, you can double it. All right, so I'm going to turn on my heat here, my stove. I have a wok over here. You don't need a wok. You could use something like just a big skillet, but you want something kind of big that all of your ingredients are going to fit into. I'm going to use sesame oil today. You don't have to use sesame oil. Avocado oil would be another really great alternative. Canola oil would work really well too. You want something that has a higher smoke point because you cook a stir fry at a higher temperature. Just a plain old olive oil would work okay too. You just have to be careful that you're not overheating it. But I'm going to use sesame oil. Sesame oil also gives a really nice Asian flavor. So that's why I like to use it in stir fries. So I'm just going to toss all of my vegetables in there. I don't think I'm going to use all of this broccoli because that looks like quite a bit, but I'm just going to toss some in there. That looks like about 6 cups of vegetables total. A little bit more. We'll set that aside. All right, so we're just going to let this cook for a while. And while we're doing that, I'm going to go double time here, and I'm going to start working on another stir fry. So I've never attempted this before in my life, to cook 2 stir fries at one time. So why not do it in front of a live audience, right? So wish me luck. So for this one, I'm doing the onion too. I'm going to slice it just a little bit differently. I'm going to slice it lengthwise. I'm using my other half of the onion here. So this stir fry is going to be a little bit spicy. The other stir fry I'm doing, I'm using chicken for the protein in this stir fry, and we're going to do a like a lemon sesame dressing or sauce on this stir fry, and we're using an interesting vegetable here, which I'll talk about in a second. So this is called bok choy, or some people call it Chinese cabbage. And our audience members all have bok choy in front of them too. But as you can see, it looks a little bit different. And I'm just going to kind of stir as I go here. So our audience members have baby bok choy. And either one of them is perfectly fine to use in a stir fry. It's very versatile. The baby bok choy is like super cute. You can use the baby bok choy. I would usually chop that up and use it raw in a salad, but really either one could be used in a stir fry or a salad. The big bok choy would go fine in a salad too. So the bok choy is in the cabbage family. It is related to cabbage. It's also related to broccoli. It is super, super nutrient dense. As you can see, it almost reminds me of like celery or Swiss chard. It has like this big, like thick, tough stem, and then just a few like leafy greens on top. It's very mild in flavor. You know, sometimes the stems kind of remind me of celery a little bit, but it's more mild than celery. And the leaves, you know, some people were asking, well, does it taste like spinach or kale? It's definitely a little bit more mild than that too. I'd normally save those, but it looks like there's a little dirt on the end of it. Well, it's fine. So I'm just going to give this a quick chop. So as you can see, it's super easy to prepare. You'd want to wash it first. These were washed. Our caterer went ahead and pre-washed all of our vegetables for us today. But definitely make sure you wash all your vegetables. And I actually might use this second one too. And stir. When you're cooking a stir fry, the goal is to get like a nice crisp, tender vegetable. I'm going to turn that heat down just a tad. Starting to get some brown bits. And add just a tiny bit more oil to the top of that. You don't want like mushy, overcooked vegetables. So you're just giving them a quick cook at a high temperature. And that's why, like, if you go out to, you know, a Chinese restaurant or, you know, a more Asian-inspired restaurant and you get a stir fry, that's why your food comes out so quick, because it doesn't take long to cook the vegetables in a stir fry. These burners are sometimes a little difficult. I'm going to put you guys in charge of telling me if that goes off. So as you can see, our broccoli, is starting to get like a nice and bright green. And I'm just going to kind of spread it out on the bottom of the wok just to make sure it all kind of gets some heat to it. Give it a few more minutes and keep chopping up my bok choy. So, like I said, bok choy is super nutrient dense. Like, I was looking at what nutrients are in bok choy, and like basically everything. It has vitamin C and vitamin A, vitamin K, B vitamins. What's it good for? Just about everything. So I was actually reading an article, and they were saying that bok choy can help decrease the risk of cancer and heart disease and decrease inflammation, and it's really good for your skin and good for your digestive tract. So I think it'd be an excellent vegetable to add to your diet for just about everything. I'm going to turn this down a sec. I'm going to turn that off so I can focus on this one. So I'm going to take some more sesame oil and drizzle it all over this pan. turn on my heat there. Let it cook for a second. So this pan is really big, so it's going to take a second. And sometimes you can kind of, tilt the skillet a little bit and get the oil all over. While that's heating up, I'm actually going to transfer my vegetables over here to a bowl. Because now we're going to cook our protein in here and then add everything all back together at the end. So you'll get a chance to reheat those vegetables. And you don't have to rinse out your pan or anything, so we're going to keep cooking right on in there. So now I'm going to toss my onions into this skillet. And my bok choy, all in there as well. I'm going to try to eyeball about 6 cups of it, although I might have just a tad too much. Looks good to me. And give it a stir. So like I said, bok choy is a popular ingredient in like Asian-inspired stir fries, but you can also eat it raw. And a salad is, a great way to enjoy bok choy. Our caterer made a beautiful salad. It had like an Asian-inspired dressing on it, and she served like a beautiful piece of protein on top, and it was just gorgeous. So we have that recipe if anybody's interested in it as well. Or you can just chop it up and put it in, a regular tossed salad along with your other greens and vegetables. I pulled that move when we had a guest over, and I told him after he had the salad, and he was like, wait, what did I eat? So he couldn't even taste it in the salad. He just thought it was regular lettuce. The bok choy is going to cook pretty fast. So we'll give that a second. And while we're doing that, I'm going to just keep going back and forth here. Our tofu should be pretty well drained now. So I'm just going to unwrap it. And there it is. It looks like mozzarella cheese, right? It doesn't taste like mozzarella cheese, though. And the texture is a little different, too. What does tofu taste like? It tastes like whatever dressing you are going to put on it, whatever flavoring you're going to put on it. If you're going to put garlic and crushed red pepper on it, cooking in that, it's going to taste like garlic and crushed red pepper. We are using sriracha and honey, ginger. So that's what it's going to taste like. All right. Give that a few more minutes while I chop up I'm actually going to use this big one. So you can really cut the tofu any size you like, but I like it in smaller pieces. Cute story, I made this recipe for my family last night, and I haven't tried tofu on my kids in a while. They've had it before, but I don't think they remember it. And they're like, what is this? And I told them it was chicken. They're like, this chicken tastes funny, Mom. And I was like, well, it's a really young, tender chicken. And then under my breath, I was like, made out of soybeans. So they weren't, I mean, it's a different texture. So it is an acquired taste, but it's something I wanted to introduce and show you how to prepare. So this looks really good to me. I'm going to just turn off the heat on this one now too. Okay, so as you can see, I kind of cut the whole thing in half, and then I cut it into like long strips like that. And now I'm going to go back the other way and just slice it into cubes. Now I need my sesame oil again, and I'm going to drizzle a little bit more sesame oil in my wok, turn on the heat, and just kind of give it a whirl in there to get all the oil evenly distributed. And then I'm going to try to evenly place the tofu in the wok. I like my tofu to be brown, like on all the sides, to get it a little bit crisp. So that's why I'm kind of carefully placing it so that all of the tofu is evenly dispersed over the bottom of the pan. So it's all in contact with the pan and it has a chance to like kind of brown up and get crisp. Okay, so while that's cooking, I'm going to transfer my vegetables from this recipe. So as you can see, that's what they look like. Can you see it? I know sometimes you guys can't see it in the audience. So like, as you would think there'd be a lot more green in there, and actually the green cooks down quite a bit. So you see just a lot of, it's mostly the stem that you see. Okay, so we have this set aside. And now I'm going to start cooking my chicken for this recipe. So a little more soy sauce, or sorry, not soy sauce, sesame oil. And I'm tilting the pan. I'm wondering if someone in the audience wouldn't mind going and grabbing me a clove of garlic. And our lovely caterer just walked in, and I realized we forgot a clove of garlic for one of our recipes, and I don't think it's too late. So, all right. We also, to save a little time today, somebody cut up our chicken for us, which if you've been to any Livets before, you know that this is my least favorite job in the kitchen, is cutting up the chicken. But I'm still going to wash my hands. So I'm just spreading the chicken out in the bottom of the skillet over here. I have a pound of it. So as you can see, there's something in each of these stir fries that probably makes our audience members a little bit uncomfortable. We have the tofu on one side and we have the bok choy on the other side. But then there's also things in both of these stir fries that you're totally comfortable with. Like most people are probably comfortable with broccoli and red peppers and carrots. So honestly, when I'm serving new foods to my family, that's kind of what I go for. Like you don't want to introduce all weird things all at the same time because then it's just too much. But if there's familiar things added to unfamiliar things, awesome, thank you, then it's a little bit more inviting, I guess. So I'm gonna just kind of check and see. Perfect. So as you can see, it's getting a little bit brown. And that's what you want to look for with a piece of tofu. So now I'm just going to kind of flip it a little bit. So we get a little bit of color. But you want to try to be careful not to break the tofu as well. I'm trying to remember the first time that I had tofu. And I'm not sure that I loved it. It's one of those things that it might take 1 or 2 times to try it before, it really becomes something that you enjoy. I'm gonna flip my chicken over as well. I ate tofu a lot in college actually because it's cheap and I could stretch it a long way and mix it with other cheap ingredients like stir-fry ingredients. I would do stir-fry a lot in college, and I would also make like a fried rice with tofu in it. Tofu and vegetable fried rice, so that's another way that it works really well. And I would eat that like all week long because it was just me. And I really tried to follow a plant-based diet back when I was in college, so. Letting that cook a little bit more, we'll check again on our tofu, which is looking really good. I'm actually going to turn the heat down, or even off, on this while I get my sauce ready. So, you can either, to make the sauces, you can either whisk them together in a bowl, or my method that I really like is using a mason jar, like a small one like this, which I actually brought from home. It has some ounce measurements on the side, so you can use that so you don't have to get your measuring spoons dirty. So for this, I'm using this dressing. It's a sweet and spicy dressing on our tofu. So I'm using a 1/4 cup of honey. And let's see. So it should go right to that 2. So it's 2 ounces. So 2 ounces is a 1/4 of a cup. And then, so I don't have to measure my soy sauce, so 2 ounces is also 4 tablespoons. And I'm using 2 tablespoons, or sorry, yes, 2 ounces is 4 tablespoons. So I'm using 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. So I'm going to just fill it halfway between the 2 and the 4 line on here. And then I'm going to toss in a little bit of garlic, about a clove worth of garlic. They chopped it for me already. Well, it was already a pre-chopped garlic, but I almost forgot that, but we didn't. And then I have some ground ginger. I prefer to use fresh ginger, but I also understand that that might be a little out of a lot of people's comfort zone. I've shown you how to do fresh ginger in previous videos, so to save some time today, we're just doing dried ginger. Okay, and then the sriracha, you can just put your lid on. If you wanted, this is where you could do this ahead of time. Toss it in the refrigerator. Honestly, you know, if you're making it that same day, it probably doesn't even really need to be refrigerated. Well, it does have garlic in it, so I'd probably refrigerate it. You could also freeze this if you were, wanted to make a bunch of sauces up ahead of time. And then just go ahead and shake it. So really, really simple to make a dressing or a sauce out of pantry staples. These are things that I have in my pantry pretty much all the time. So it comes together quickly for a really delicious sauce. I'm going to turn this heat back on. I'm going to toss my vegetables in first, actually. just so everything is, really nice and evenly coated and mixed together with the sauce. I love a good sweet and spicy sauce on broccoli. I feel like it just gets into all of those little crevices that are in a broccoli floret. I'm going to drizzle, pour my sauce right over the top. Give it a stir. You want to let those vegetables reheat a bit too. There. And that looks beautiful. So you can serve this over rice, or actually last night, which I think is a genius move for this dish because it's, unfortunately plant-based protein isn't quite as high in protein as animal-based protein bite for bite. So I paired it with quinoa, which is also a complete protein, which gave me a little bit of extra protein in that plant-based meal. So quinoa would be an excellent addition, and that grain is just going to kind of absorb all that extra sauce and make it really delicious. So I'm going to turn this off because this one is ready. All right, so let's give this one a little bit more attention. It needs some sauce too. So in this, I have a half cup of chicken broth. You could use vegetable broth too if you wanted. I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. Ooh, gets a little hard. Uh-oh. I think we've had this problem before. We have hard brown sugar. Really hard brown sugar. Okay. Well, hopefully when we mix it with the liquid, it will soften up. And we have lemon juice. That's the juice of 1 lemon, so it's about 2.5 tablespoons. Give that a stir. And then, I have enough cornstarch here that the sauce for the tofu stir fry that we made, it actually did call for about a tablespoon of soy sauce in it, but I don't know that it doesn't have a lot of liquid, so you don't really need the cornstarch in it to thicken it all that much. But this definitely has a lot of liquid, so I'm going to put the teaspoon of cornstarch in there and just whisk it together. And the chicken stock was cold. Everything is cold in here, so the starch granules don't clump together. And the brown sugar did break up and dissolve quite nicely, so that will not be a concern. All right, so I'm going to turn my heat back on here and pour my sauce right over the top. And I'm going to wait for a second to add my vegetables here because I want to cook the chicken just a little bit in the sauce and just let it thicken a tiny bit. Well, this is heating back up. Are there any questions in the audience about bok choy or tofu?
You were cubing the tofu.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Can you crumble it like a ground beef, or does it not really?
I have never, so the question was, can you cut the tofu in smaller pieces if it's new to you? And yes, you absolutely can cut it any size that you want. You could do it bigger or smaller. Like I like mine in kind of bite-sized pieces, and I was kind of chunking them. But yeah, you can cut it smaller. I have never crumbled tofu, but I know that's something, like you can find like mock scrambled egg recipes where they use tofu and they crumble it up. I've never tried that. I don't like so much to make my tofu try to taste like something that it's not. I don't like to try to make it taste like eggs or meat per se, because it's not going to replace what you're looking for. So I try to, make it what it is and use ingredients and flavors that complement it. Use it more in its traditional way in a stir fry, which is, a traditional way to eat tofu. And I think you'll be happier with that if it's a new food instead of something that you're trying to replace another food with. All right, so that thickened up quite nicely. I'm going to go ahead and add my veggies back in. And also, I think this is going to be really nice because the meat had started to brown, and it had some like little bits in the bottom of this skillet. But when I added that liquid in, it deglazed the pan, so we have all of the little meaty bits that stayed right in the pan. And it looks really, really delicious, actually. All right. And so for this one, I'm going to put a few sesame seeds right on top of it, just to give it a little crunch and make it pretty. And turn it off. So those are both done. So we have now completed, and I'm going to pick it up and show you. That is what our chicken and bok choy with a lemon sesame sauce looks like. And this is what our tofu with mixed vegetables looks like. And you can see a little bit of sauce that's kind of in the bottom. And that's perfectly okay because, again, that's gonna cover your rice. I like to get a little bit of sauce on the rice, and it's gonna make it all taste delicious. So thank you for joining me today on Live It Stir Fry Your Way. And I hope that this inspires you to try one of our sauces and clean out your refrigerator by using up all of your vegetables and protein that you're not sure what to do with, and make a delicious and nutritious meal for your family tonight. We'll see you next time on Live It.